It's no fault of Elvis, he loved the song.
Dolly Parton is known as America's sweetheart and the undisputed queen of country music. Her voice and charm have won over hearts all over the world for decades. But behind her beautiful smile is a story that not many people have heard. It was full of tension, betrayal, and famous feuds that were never in the news. Everyone seemed to love her on stage and in front of the cameras. It seemed like they could never say anything bad about her. They smiled next to her at award shows and praised her in interviews. But things were very different behind the scenes. There were slammed doors, mean words, and friendships that hurt. One singer swore they would never work with her again. Someone else tried to take her biggest hit. Dolly tried her best to keep everything a secret, but now the truth has come out about the 5 singers she will never work with again. What really took place behind closed doors? Why are some of those old scars still open? You will never see Dolly Parton the same way again after you find out the truth. How she became a star is nothing short of amazing. Not many people know how dramatic she is behind the scenes, but she is known for her big blonde hair, sparkly clothes, and sweet voice that can melt hearts. Dolly has been through a lot. She started out as a very poor girl in rural Tennessee and is now one of the most famous singers in music history. People know her as the Queen of Kindness because she always makes things better. Some people in the business have been mean to Dolly even though she is very nice. To figure out who Dolly had a problem with, you need to know more about her. A woman who tries hard to stay out of trouble but always ends up in the middle of it. She was born on January 19, 1946, in a small house with only one room in Locust Ridge, Tennessee. Her family had 12 kids and lived in a simple mountain house. They loved each other but had a hard time. Lee Parton, her father, worked hard as a farmer and building worker but couldn't read or write. But Dolly always said he was the smartest person she knew. The girl's mom, Avie Lee, had 12 kids before she turned 35. She taught Dolly to love stories, music, and faith. Music wasn't just a hobby for the Partons, it was a way to stay alive. Because they didn't have any money for fun, the kids learned to sing in church and play together on the porch. Dolly's family saw how talented she was right away. When she was 10, she was singing on Knoxville radio and TV shows, and not long after that she went on stage at the Grand Ole Opry. She packed her bags and left for Nashville the day after graduating from high school in 1964. She had no money or ties, but she had skill and big dreams. She began by writing songs for other acts. That wasn't enough for Dolly, though. She wanted the attention. Dumb Blonde was her first country hit, which came out in 1967. A smart song that showed she was more than just pretty. She joined the Porter Wagoner Show that same year. After that, everything changed. Many people watched Dolly Parton light up their screens every week. Her duets with Porter Wagoner were instant hits because fans loved how well they worked together and how charming Dolly was. By the beginning of the 1970th second, she went out on her own and started a career that no one could stop. In 1973, Jolene became an anthem. The next big hit was I Will Always Love You, which went on to become a worldwide hit. Also, Whitney Houston sang it many years later, and it became one of the most famous songs ever. But don't get it wrong, Dolly still has the rights. Like any good person, she never brags about how much money that one song made her. By the 1980 seconds, Dolly was in a lot of films, on the radio, and even on products. She wasn't just a country singer because she was in 9 to 5 with Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin. She made people laugh all the time. Then came Dollywood, her own theme park that opened in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee in 1996. Dolly built an amusement park to give back to her city and help the economy while other famous people bought yachts. But don't think that her kindness means she is naive. There aren't many smarter women in show business than Dolly. She has written a huge number of songs, won many Grammys and Lifetime Achievement Awards, and is now in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. For someone who grew up without running water, that's pretty good. She still gives back. Dolly has given away millions of books to kids all over the world through her Dream Library, making sure that every child can read. Dolly has kept up her image as sweet, humble, and above all the drama over the years. But even a Southern angel has bounds. People who fought with her, didn't think she was good enough, or tried to take credit for her success are hidden behind the sparkle and smiles. One thing is certain, Dolly will never forget. Dolly Parton may have smiled through it all, but behind the scenes she had her share of fights, stress, and hurt feelings that time could never heal. One of the first and most complicated was with the man who helped her start her business and then tried to take it over. It was one of the most dramatic breaks in the history of country music when two strong artists decided to go their separate ways. Porter Wagoner versus Dolly Parton. Porter Wagoner was one of the biggest names in country music before Dolly became a worldwide star. Porter had a voice that could melt hearts and loads of charm, so he had a huge fan base. He was the star of the Porter Wagoner Show, which is one of the most famous country music shows on American TV, by the 1960 seconds. Porter wowed people on stage with his flashy clothes and friendly personality. He was smart, business savvy, and very traditional when he wasn't on stage. He knew what people wanted, and when he met Dolly Parton, he saw something unique. Fans were not happy when Dolly replaced the much-loved Normani on the Porter Wagoner Show. Some people didn't like the change and booed her during performances, while others wrote angry notes, but Porter stuck by her and insisted she stay. Dolly, who was always kind and determined, kept her cool and focused on showing what she could do. They got along right away and became a team. Their duets were magical, and you couldn't deny how well they got along. They made over a dozen top 10 hits together, and became one of the most popular country music pairs. They looked like a great team on camera, but there were cracks beginning to show behind those smiles. What's wrong? Porter wanted more than just to sing with Dolly. He wanted to be in charge of her job. He planned her shows, picked the songs they recorded, and made most of the important business choices. And for Dolly Parton, who is strong-willed and independent, that power wouldn't last forever. She had more to her than just a pretty face and a nice voice. She wrote songs, thought deeply, and had her own dreams. Her goals went far beyond making duet records and appearing on TV shows as a guest. She put up with it for a while, but as her fame grew, she wanted to be on her own. The routine got old after a while, and Dolly began writing songs that didn't fit the Porter and Dolly style anymore. She just wanted easy creative freedom, and to be able to speak her own mind. However, Porter found it hard to give her that. Dolly later said that he didn't think of her as being on the same level as him. He gave her a stage at first, but it felt like a cage as time went on. Dolly didn't leave right away though. She tried to work things out even though she owed him a lot of money. That being said, by 1973, the strain was too great to ignore. In 1974, after a year, she finally left the Porter Wagoner Show. In public it looked like a fun party, but behind closed doors there was still a lot going on. Porter came back 5 years after she left, but this time she had lawyers with her. His claim was that she had broken their contract and owed him management fees, show costs, and a share of her post-show earnings. He sued her for $3 million in 1979. Dolly was caught off guard. Porter had been an important part of her early career and a mentor to her, so the case hurt her deeply. Because that's just how she is. The disagreement got messy with press coverage, rumors, and tension spreading through the industry. Dolly wouldn't get dirty in a fight. She settled the case out of court in a quiet way. She later said she didn't want to fight him. Her only wish was to be free. The whole thing made her feel emotionally drained. Porter was an important part of her fame, and she still cared about him over everything. Even though they had done great things together, he just couldn't let her go. In an interview, Dolly once opened up about her struggle to leave Porter Wagoner's show. She recalled telling him, "I promised you I'd stay 5 years, then it became 6, then 7.
He just couldn't accept it.
He thought it would ruin his show. We were tied together emotionally in so many ways, and he refused to listen. That admission revealed everything. Their conflict wasn't just about contracts or money. It was rooted in something far more personal. Dolly saw a side of Porter she had never encountered before, and it wounded her deeply. Yet time has a way of shifting things. By the late 1980s, after years of tension and near silence, Dolly and Porter began finding their way back to a fragile friendship. Then in 2002, Dolly shocked nearly everyone when she chose to personally induct Porter Wagoner into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Standing on stage, she spoke from the heart about all he had meant to her, even during their hardest moments. When Porter fell ill with lung cancer in 2007, Dolly visited him in the hospital. Only weeks later he passed away. Dolly was devastated. She held a private tribute at Dollywood, not for attention, but to honor the man who had both lifted her up and held her back. That chapter with Porter remains one of the most emotionally complicated and defining moments of Dolly's life. One few people truly understand. But the story didn't end there. The next name on Dolly's list didn't just upset her, she turned the entire country music world upside down. Alongside Emmylou Harris, Dolly and Linda formed what many called the Dream Trio. Three powerhouse vocalists whose harmonies blended with almost supernatural perfection. Their trio album produced unforgettable songs that still send chills decades later. But behind the microphones, the harmony between Dolly and Linda wasn't nearly as smooth. What had begun as a warm musical sisterhood, nearly unraveled in the mid-1970s, evolving into one of the most whispered about feuds in country music. At the time, all three women were already major stars, admiring one another's talent and eager to create something historic. But record label politics and clashing schedules kept pushing the project off. Finally, in 1987, the long-awaited trio album was released. It went platinum, topped the country charts, and won a Grammy. To the public, everything seemed perfect. Inside the studio, however, it was far from peaceful. Dolly was fast and instinctive. She loved recording a song in 1 or 2 takes, capturing raw emotion. Linda was the exact opposite. A meticulous perfectionist, she spent hours shaping every note, every breath. Emmylou often found herself in the mediator's seat as the tension between Dolly and Linda grew heavier. Dolly later acknowledged that working with Linda sometimes felt like dealing with a demanding diva who wanted endless studio time. She admitted she had moments where she nearly snapped in frustration. Their creative methods simply didn't mesh, and everyone around them could feel the strain. They attempted a second round with Trio 2 in 1994, but more label issues and scheduling conflicts delayed the release until 1999. By then the magic was still present in the music, but the friendship was not. The damage had already been done. Linda Ronstadt eventually spoke publicly about her frustrations. She said Dolly frequently canceled plans or arrived late, and that her unreliability made the process difficult. She described Dolly as flaky, insisting that the star wasn't as committed to the group as she was to her solo career. That attitude, Linda said, soured the entire collaboration. The tension was so strong that Linda vowed she had no desire to work with Dolly again, saying Dolly's lack of professionalism had ruined what should have been a joyful experience. Although time mellowed some of the resentment, an awkwardness always lingered. Neither woman ever fully forgot the friction that had once overshadowed their musical triumph. The legacy of the trio albums remains iconic, but behind those ethereal harmonies, Linda's sharp words cast a long shadow over what many hoped would be a lifelong musical sisterhood. When people hear the name Elvis Presley, they think of the king of rock and roll, a man who changed the landscape of music. And then there's Dolly Parton, the queen of country, known for her unmatched songwriting and storytelling. Both were living legends, and their paths nearly crossed in a way that could have made music history. The spark began with one of Dolly's most treasured songs, I Will Always Love You. Written in 1973, the ballad was her emotional farewell to Porter Wagoner as she prepared to strike out on her own. It became a massive hit, carrying a piece of Dolly's heart in every line. Not long after the song topped the charts, Elvis's camp took notice. Elvis wanted to record it. Dolly was thrilled. Elvis had a magic touch that turned songs into timeless classics. But then came the problem. Elvis' "save manager," the notoriously controlling Colonel Tom Parker, demanded 50% of the publishing rights in exchange for Elvis recording the song. That was the price of being part of Elvis's catalog. She explained to Parker, "This is the most important copyright in my entire publishing company. I can't give half of it away." It wasn't only about royalties. It was about respecting her work and her voice as a songwriter. Dolly later admitted the decision broke her heart. She adored Elvis and desperately wanted him to sing her song. She believed Elvis was genuinely hurt by her refusal, and she felt the change in their relationship even though he never confronted her directly. But in the end, Dolly's choice proved monumental. When Whitney Houston later recorded I Will Always Love You, it became one of the biggest singles of all time, earning Dolly millions and cementing her legacy far beyond country music. Turning down Elvis Presley wasn't easy, but it was a moment that defined Dolly's strength, her integrity, and her belief that her art mattered. Dolly Parton has always been known for her warmth, humility, and grace. She rarely lets negativity get the best of her. But in 2008, one shock jock pushed her to her limit: Howard Stern. By the late 1980s and 90s, the Howard Stern Show had become legendary, beloved for its brutal honesty and criticized for its vulgarity. Fans saw Stern as fearless, others saw him as needlessly offensive, and then in 2008, Dolly became the target of one of his most outrageous and cruel stunts. During a radio segment, Stern's team took audio from Dolly's autobiography recording, My Life and Other Unfinished Business. They cut and rearranged her words to create a fake interview, making it sound like Dolly was making vile, racist, and sexually explicit remarks. They even edited her voice into mocking statements about other artists, including Kenny Rogers and Linda Ronstadt. The segment was presented as comedy. In reality, it was malicious and humiliating. Dolly, who almost never reacts publicly to insults, was devastated. She released a rare, raw statement saying, "I have never been so shocked, hurt, and humiliated in all my life." The bit wasn't funny. It was an attack on her character, her reputation, and her dignity. I quote, "I'm shocked by what Howard Stern did to me. I would never say something so rude again in a million years." She said the part was disgusting and even hinted at going to court by saying, "If there was ever going to be a lawsuit, it's going to be over this." The response was immediate. Fans were very angry. Country radio stations and longtime fans defended Dolly's reputation on message boards and in comments. People from outside the country scene stood by her. Howard Stern didn't give up, though. He didn't say sorry or show regret. Instead, he laughed it off and said people were being too emotional because it was only a joke. He thought it was a joke, but Dolly took it very seriously, and the hurt it caused didn't heal quickly. Following the bad event in 2008, Dolly Parton and Howard Stern broke up. As usual, Dolly took the right thing to do. She never yelled at him in public or called him names in interviews. She didn't say anything, letting her fans and the public talk for her. People still felt hurt and they couldn't forget what had happened for years. Then, though, something completely out of the blue caught everyone by surprise. In 2023, Dolly shocked her fans by going on Howard Stern's show for the first time. It had been 15 years since the scandal, and no one thought she'd ever go back to his workshop. But Dolly had a job to do. Rockstar is her new rock album, which she was supporting. And if there was ever a time to break the rules, it was now. Stern was polite, which surprised everyone. He said nice things about her and called her a star. He admired her energy and voice. He didn't be rude like he usually does for once. Still, it was hard to ignore how tense things were between them. It was clear that Dolly was there to do business and not to ask again. That being said, Dolly once again showed the world what class and duty look like. She didn't think about the past a lot. She changed the story to fit her needs. Then Wilco's Jeff Tweedy came on. People rarely say bad things about Dolly Parton in public. In the singing world, she's almost impossible to beat. But Tweedy, who is known for having a sharp tongue and writing beautiful songs, didn't hold back. He's known for making important contributions to alt country and indie music, but what he said about Dolly caused a lot of debate. In an interview, Tweedy talked about Dolly's place in the history of country music, but she quickly said that her singing was shallow. He said her words were too simple and didn't have the emotional depth of deeper, more abstract songwriting. He thought that Dolly's strength was her catchy tunes, not her deep stories. He even compared her to other lyricists he thought wrote more important lyrics. This made it sound like her popularity was more due to her looks and charm than to the quality of her lyrics. Tweedy said something famously, "I love Dolly Parton. I know she wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You on the same day. I think she should have stopped after Jolene." Even though he wasn't trying to be mean, his words came off as rude, especially to a woman whose songs have been important to generations. Later, it was said that Dolly knew about the words and wasn't happy about them. Dolly has always written songs that are very close to her heart. Her songs are based on her life, her heart, and her experiences, which is something that can't be judged by rules. It must have hurt to have another artist question you. But as usual for Dolly, she didn't say anything in public. She didn't need to. Her songs still move a lot of people around the world. After all, from Coat of Many Colors to 9 to 5, her music has appealed to people of all ages and styles. No amount of negativity can change the fact that she has had a huge impact on the music world. Even with all of her fights, attacks, and controversies, Dolly Parton has stayed humble, strong, and gracious. She has had to deal with complaints and insults from the public. Still, she always comes out stronger. What do you think? In these fights, which one did Dolly's success suffer the most? Type your ideas in the box below. Also, if you like learning about the untold lives of famous musicians, please like, subscribe, and click the bell button to make sure you never miss an update.